Have you ever wondered what it really takes to make Agile work? Well, at the Global Agile Summit, we're bringing you real-life, first-person stories of Agile succeeding out there in the real world that will inspire you to take action. Whether you're a leader, a product innovator, a developer, you'll hear practical insights from those who've done it. They'll be telling their own stories from the stage. I'll tell you more about this at the end of this episode, so stay back and listen to the full detailed description of what we have in store for you at the Global Agile Summit. But if you can't wait, you can go right now to globalagilesummit.com and check out our full schedule. For now, on to the episode, but I'll see you at the end of this episode with more details on the Global Agile Summit. Talk to you soon. Hello, everybody. Welcome to one more episode of the CTO Series. And joining us for today's CTO Series episode is Jussi Mononen. Hey, Jussi, welcome to the show.
Hello. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
As you will very quickly realize, Jussi is a bundle of energy. He's also a problem solver, a programmer, and a business to technology translator. People side of software systems is, as he often says, he says that developing software systems is all about people. I should re-edit the bio before I publish it as well. And he has both technology and people street cred, being a long-time Agile practitioner. I actually met Jussi when he was both a programmer and an Agile coach, and he's now the CTO of a promising scale-up in Helsinki called CarbonLink. Check it out on the show notes. So, Jussi, that's a short intro, but of course you have a long career, and as it often goes...
A quarter of a century.
Oh, there you go.
Did you have of a century?
Did you get the silver plaque already? Like, do you have it there?
No, not yet.
One should give oneself one of those.
That length actually hit me when I was giving a visiting lecture at Aalto University, and I was like introducing myself shortly, like, "Hi, I'm Jussi, and I've been doing this for 25 years, for a quarter of a century."
There you go.
That was kind of a okay moment. Like, yes, I'm getting old or experienced, as they want to say.
Yeah, on to the next 75 is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
All right, but in those 25 years, I'm sure you've learned a lot about leadership and technology. Can you share one of those pivotal moments that shaped how you look at the role of the CTO?
There might be actually a couple pivotal moments. The first one is kind of easy to describe. It was when I first got introduced into Agile methods while I was working for a middle-sized listed company making software for teleoperators. And it was a chaos, like when it was done in old waterfall-ish methods, and there was no structure. And the introduction of Agile ideas kind of opened up a larger avenue, like software is not just code. And there it started my kind of a humanist as an engineer kind of approach to software. I realized that there's a larger picture. I realized that there are lots of a room for errors, and almost all of those errors were related to humans. People make mistakes.
One of the things that I really like about that intro is, okay, so I was developing software with waterfall-like methods. And of course, that's understandable. I mean, a quarter of a century puts you right in the end of the waterfall tail in terms of methodologies. But then you said, and the intro of Agile ideas opened this larger perspective, a more humanist perspective. So let's dive into that a little bit more, Jussi. Make the contrast of what was there before and then after Agile. What are the biggest differences you noticed in your own perspective on software development?
Basically, before the kind of the vision that Agile gave, what software production can be, there was it was more siloed. There were heavy barriers, kind of walls built between different people who were kind of managing or trying to manage the actual business that we were trying to support with the software. I was working on an R&D department, and we were making software that was crucial for billing customer, for example. Whenever you made a call, you send an MMS message. Like, how do you bill for an MMS message? We did it first with Radiolinja at the time. And it was a mess because people didn't know how to discuss or approach problem solving as a whole. There wasn't this kind of a holistic view on the ideas or the problems or the actual business, and so it was like just siloed. We did some technical stuff. We didn't care.
We coded, right?
Yeah, and then someone did the, let's say, sales, and they sold something like, it could be that it didn't exist, so we were kind of selling slideware or vaporware, and then we were given just a like rigid time frame. Oh, I saw this one. I know we don't have it, and you have 1 month time to develop and deliver it. And with the advent of Agile, it kind of yeah, well, basically it opened up the perspective that you have to have a holistic approach to everything regarding software. You cannot do it in isolation and then you emerge from a dark room after 3 months and say it's done, please sell it. It just doesn't work that way. And it kind of made sense since I've kind of since a small kid I've been part of like of communities of different sizes, sports clubs and so forth, like playing for a team, being part of a soccer club, and I was like coaching little kids at the time in football, and it's kind of a holistic approach. It partially also applied to the football. It's a chaotic idea of a sport, and actually, like the what is this? I'm forgetting terms, but um, ah,
No worries. Take your time. We
yeah,
have an
yeah, because
editor.
I just had the discussion with I'm still managing a club. This is like a sports club, and we had a long discussion about chaos in football, and it was based on these British scientists' work on emerging systems, and with this, I just can't pinpoint it. But anyway, the human approach kind of enlightened me that the only way to make reasonable software that, that provides benefits for people who will be the end users. Because even though we sell it to companies and people like treat companies as customers, there are, in the end, it's always humans who will use the system or enjoy the benefits that a system brings, and you have to involve all the people in there. So that's kind of where it started. It's not a single bright moment. It's not like I can say this date, but it was kind of a gradual progress within like a month when I started to learn that, hey, we do have these humans everywhere. So
And this focus on humans, of course, I mean, very often in Agile, we talk about humans as the team, right? Like the humans developing
yeah,
the software. But you're talking about much more than that. You're talking about the humans who ask for the software to be developed. That would be the
yes,
business side, sales,
yeah,
marketing, the CEO, whatever.
and those
The
who will, and the end users, those who
and the
will
end
actually
users
use
and
it.
also the customers, right? Because it's not just
Yeah,
end
yeah,
users. In some
yeah,
cases you
because
have customers and end users as separate.
yeah,
So
because you
so
have
when you think about your role as a CTO, how do you now bring that perspective, that more humanist perspective, into the work that you're doing as a CTO?
well, we talk a lot to our customers, and I have this a little habit of uh, declining every single idea of a new feature or a new product or anything related to software initially, because I want that every single time that someone asks for a feature or a new approach or something, that they actually have to argue why. Because In the end, every piece of software and every line of code that you write will be a liability because you will invest time and money in there, and then you have to maintain it. You have to, for example, from a developer perspective, you have to have documentation, or you have to make sure that it works and it's readable. And from a company's perspective, it's a liability because you have promised and you have delivered that to someone. And usually I approach the software that the software is done when you actually pull the plug and nobody is using it. Until that moment, someone is in a position that to maintain it, to be aware that it exists and be aware how to keep it up and running. So every single line of code or a feature or system will become a liability. And this is directly related to total cost of ownership. And we are talking about decades, not like months or days. I'm talking about years and most likely decades. When you create, for example, a larger software systems, you have to approach the initial design in a way that you have long enough time span. If you design or architect software within like just thinking 1 year forward, most likely you will miss something crucial. Things will live longer than you expect.
Okay, so that
You will
is
be
absolutely
surprised. Yeah,
that is absolutely true. Okay, so there's a couple of topics here that you approached that I think are great
yeah,
as segues for the next question. So you talked about, okay, as much as possible, talk to your customers. Don't consider software ever as done until it's no longer running, right? It's dead, it's gone, it's
yeah,
no longer running.
yeah,
Every line of code is a liability, and make sure that you think about the longer time span, not just what you need to deliver tomorrow. Those are all
yeah,
great tips and heuristics, especially when you need to make sure that the tech strategy, like this longer term and the
yeah.
aspect of maintainability and all of that you were talking about, needs to align with the business objectives, which are in many cases, even in startups like you, even more. In many cases, those business objectives are kind of a lot more shorter term, right? And we need to kind of manage as CTOs, as technology leaders, we need to kind of manage this understanding of the long-term sustainability of the code base versus the short-term demands from the business. How do you do that at CarbonLink?
Yeah, there are a couple of different views on that. First is that when we started about 4 years ago, and we don't call ourselves startup anymore, we are more like a growth company. We are now like financially independent, so we are kind of financing ourselves with our software. But basically, first you have to figure out the technology that will kind of you can trust the technology in a way that it will be operable, maintainable, and usable for the next 10 years, and still you have to select in a way that allows you to move really fast. So when we started, we are using a dynamically typed language which lives in Java ecosystem. So basically, our backend is written still in Clojure. The idea is that it's dynamically typed, so it removes some development burdens. It allows us to move real fast, but still the backend is JVM, the Java Virtual Machine, which is capable of enough performance, and it's mature, and it has one of the largest ecosystems in the world regarding programming. So we thought about these things, like we want to move fast, so technology cannot limit us, but we need something that we can maintain and be sure that it's viable in 10 years. These are one of those aspects. And then one that we thought about a lot is that if we choose this technology stack, can we find people who are already familiar with it? Like if you compare to JavaScript world where things move really fast, there's a new framework like every 6 months. You have to be really careful what you choose so that you don't get the latest gimmick and then someone just stops maintaining it and you have a framework or technology in your hand that is no longer maintained when it becomes your liability because you have chosen that as the choice of weapon. like to do. So there's this kind of it's an act of balancing things. You want to move fast, you want stability, you want a certain level of maturity regarding the technology choices you have, and so forth. And it's well, you have to be really agile in a way that, for example, in the start phase, you have to get rid of technologies that do not work. But when you get your first customers, you have to really think, can this technology take the heavy load that the customers and the kind of responsibilities you accept when you take money from someone else? Are they a match? Can you do it with these technologies? That is kind of the things that we thought a lot. And your mileage may vary, but you have to trust on those technology decisions that you make, that they don't inhibit you or prevent you from moving fast enough, but still developing software that can stand the time, so that you don't need to like rewrite your software every year.
So that's actually a very important point, to think about how the technology that you choose will enable you given the business goals that you have, right? Like, for example, if you're doing one-off single-use tools that do very simple things, you're going to have a different set of technology constraints than if you're creating a system that has to be audited, probably security critical, mission critical for your customers, and needs to be maintained for decades. So that's a very good point. But how about the collaboration? Because you still have that. You talked a lot about this, kind of balancing out the different demands, and in collaboration, going back to that humanist perspective you were talking about, between business and technology. What are some of the key practices that you've put in place to make sure that you're still listening to the business, not just trying to get the perfect quote unquote technology, but at the same time that you're respecting that vision of what maintainable technology looks like without bending too much to the business? How do you make that collaboration work?
With respect and trust, basically. I have this kind of optimistic view of humanity, so that I want to trust people. At this point of my time, like I've been doing this for quarter of a century, and I'm in a company, I believe that we are all adults. So I expect and I give respect to people and their opinions, and then I trust them to make the decisions that they need. And I appreciate like open dialogue and debate. One thing that I've learned is that especially in technology, where we have kind of lots of smart and bright people, one of the biggest personal mistakes that you can make is to become jealous about your own choices and preferences. So I try to give lots of leeway and liberties to others. So if they are we had a really interesting debate a while ago where we actually moved from a dynamically typed language in our front end into a really statically typed language, because it kind of it empowered one of our developers a lot more. His productivity grew a lot because he had much more experience in statically typed languages than in dynamically typed, and he had lots of personal preferences that it gives him a certain level of assurance that my invention will work with this. And we discussed, we debated like all of these aspects that I already mentioned, and then okay, you want to try it, make a proof of concept. If it works, just go ahead. So as a CTO, I don't want to dictate like technology choices. I just want to make sure that all the choices that we make are thoroughly pondered through. You have to think from all the decisions from a multiple aspect. Like I said, total cost of ownership. Is this viable for the long term? Does it have a major enough ecosystem, or do we believe that it will gain such attraction that there will be, so that we don't have to maintain it for ourselves? And can we find enough experienced people or people willing to learn these technologies that we can kind of get new developers, or if someone changes his path and wants to work somewhere else, that we can replace someone with a new person. And if we can argue and get a reasonable result, and this is not like a discussion where there's a winner. No, this is kind of a discussion where we end up in a situation that we can all live with, and we believe that these decisions are good, timely, and they can stand the test of time. Technology is like a rounding error. You can do great stuff with almost any technology. So I'm more interested about people who will be using those technologies than the actual technology. Of course, we have, let's say, non-functional requirements like security, robustness, and how storing data and stuff like that. So we have to be careful, and we will do our due diligence like on that side. But then it will be people who will be developing software, and I would like to maximize the potential that every person has. So I trust people with the choices that they make, and maybe I consider myself more like a shepherd of brilliant people than just like dictating something. And I try to just goad people into the same direction. So you put some limits, like you shouldn't uh, you shouldn't go beyond these limits that we set unless it's absolutely necessary. You can argue why, and then we give a direction, and then we just trust people and the processes that we have in place to support the business, the people, the users, and everyone involved around us and our small financial and business ecosystem that we have at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's beautiful to hear how you brought that person or people-centered aspect back into the conversation, right? About maximizing the potential of each person in the team. And of course, that means, of course, the business people, as well as the developers, the testers, and whoever is involved. But another aspect that is particularly difficult for many CTOs out there is road mapping, right? Because you're both in the middle of what needs to be delivered yesterday, and also thinking about what the future looks like, and doing those pondered decisions that, as you were just talking about. So in your role as a CTO, talking to business, talking to customers, talking to the team in the engineering department, how do you keep the future in your horizon as a leader through road mapping?
Revising it weekly. Currently, we have this kind of all hands on deck meeting once a week, where we kind of address every aspect of our company's problem domain. So we get the latest from the customers, we get the latest from our technical support, we get the latest from developers, from everywhere, and we try to come up with a vision what will happen during the next week. This is our way of kind of organizing. We have remotely working people, but we kind of meet in person once a week. And after these discussions, they usually take like 2 to 3 hours. And after that, I usually go back to our backlog. We have a Trello, like we are using a software called Shortcut, which is kind of a Trello type of list of lists where we have like ideas and lots of like columns with stuff. And I mess it up. I kind of figure out the overall priorities of bigger ideas, and I try to maintain a roadmap of roughly 2 quarters at the single point of time. So we roughly know what were the signals from our customers, and what do we see internally, like do we need to strengthen some aspect of our program, or is there a new feature that we figured out based on some feedback that we need? And then I try to keep it like visually available all the time for everyone. Like this is how we see the next 3 to 6 months. And at the moment, we don't look any further than that, because then it falls more on the like strategy of the whole company. Like where do we want to be in 3 years of time? And our current domain, as we're working with companies reporting, like the EU standard of CSRD, which requires companies to report the carbon footprint about their good governance and social responsibilities, which is EU directive and it's mandated, and it still evolves. And we are in that business, so there will be regulation that is mandatory. It will shape the business. There will be reporting needs that will change constantly. So we have to be on our toes all the time. Like what happens in the EU level? What happens on a
But those
local
changes are
legislation
also
level?
longer term than 2 quarters, right? So how do you keep that kind of updated roadmap for the next 2 quarters, but then also take in the signals like legislation that might be coming in a year ahead?
Yeah, we follow a lot of like work groups. We follow local accountants, for example, because the responsibility of checking this CSRD reporting as part of the financial sheets that every company has to produce yearly is falling for the accountants. And we have a ongoing dialogue with all of these instances in Finland that need the information we provide. And of course, the companies who need this for their own purposes, like multiple purposes for calculating your organization's carbon footprint. And so, like, there are we have to be aware of quite variety of signal sources. So there's EU level legislation, EU level work groups, legislation locally in Finland, work groups here in Finland who are working with the legislation, and then of course the customers. We have pioneer customers who want to know their carbon footprint despite the legislation. They want to know it. And then we have customers who just say that we need this so that we can take part in this bid of this large global corporation, but we don't actually care, but we need to have it. So we have a lot of signals, and it's like reading every week, is there anything that we need to react to? And then we try to also make some forecasts on our own based on like all the signals we get from
And by
customers
this forecast, you mean forecasts for what might be coming in terms
uh,
of
yeah, like
requirements and so on, right?
yes, in terms of road mapping,
Yeah.
like it changes the order of priority. I don't mean that we forecast that in September 19th we will have this. No, I have just like a boxes with varying lengths that might or might not imply the amount of effort it will take to create it. It's just my best guess, and then I just reorder the boxes. Like next 2 months, we most likely will be doing this, and it might change weekly. So we are kind of taking a really low level and responsive approach to road mapping.
So you have this different signals coming in that helps you to figure out like the longer term trends, and then you have this weekly cycle where you evaluate all of these signals and how they impact what we are currently working on.
Yes.
And then you have kind of the middle way, which is this 2 quarter ahead roadmap that kind of merges the two views, right?
Yeah, and the middle one, the kind of the 1 or 2 quarters is basically for the board of the company because they want to know where are we heading for. Internally, I hope that everyone is kind of aware where we are going because we are doing the work itself. But I'm part of the board of the company, and they really need to know, and we present it in every meeting, that how do we see the market in a technological way, and where are we going? So they're just like keeping the board informed. How do we see the near future? So there's consumption for that information. So I keep maintaining it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point.
Yeah, I don't do it for myself or for the company. Of course, I can use it just like to visualize quickly, like, hey, this is how we see. Do you have any input, or do you disagree? Is there something that needs to be in here? So it's a tool of discussion, but also I kind of because we are in a growth phase, trying to grow quite rapidly. So the board is really interested, like our direction technologically.
Yeah, and it's a really great idea, this idea of having these different types of signals, right? Like you have the technology signals that might mean we need to adapt to the team's skills and what they feel comfortable
Yep.
with. You have these customer signals, you call them pioneer customers. What do they care about? What are they looking at? And then
Yep.
you have the legislation signals, and that comes
Yeah,
from
on different level.
different
Yeah.
groups and so on. That's a really great way to also visualize how the roadmap is evolving from different perspectives. Now, not all of these things are simple. So I wanted to tackle a particularly big and difficult challenge that you faced in your career. So what's the biggest challenge that you've faced in your career, and how did you overcome it? Or maybe you haven't and you're still trying to.
Um, well, it's hard to say what is the biggest. Technologically, I would say maybe it was the 4.5 year stint while we were rewriting completely the systems for universities here in Finland. So they had this like 20-year-old system that had been refurbished a couple of times, and it didn't kind of cater for all the needs that universities had. So in 2014, they started a project to renew the whole system. I joined the developing team in 2015, and when I left in 2019, after 4.5 years, I think 3 of the largest universities had already migrated to this new system, and it caters for all the students and the needs of their like designing their studies. It caters for all the teachers, lecturers. How do they provide the required information, and then it provides for the administration who actually then control the operations. And it was kind of a moving from a really dinosaur-like system into a modular, shareable system between completely different organizations. There was one really good description, like if you take randomly 5 middle-sized listed companies from, let's say, from Helsinki stock market, and you write a single system that should serve all of them. That was the problem domain that we had. Every single university has like hundreds of years of history and their own way of doing things.
Slightly
And we
different
had,
things.
yes. And the only kind of common thing was legislation regarding education. And we had to come up with a system that addresses all the needs of all these universities here in Finland. Like the longest history is 450 years of economic, let's say, this kind of universal freedom. They were free to do in their own ways, and they were all different. So managing those expectations, managing those technologies, I wasn't the only one, and I wasn't the person responsible for everything. We had a great team there. But we started like with 6 persons on the development side, and we had like 5, you could call them product owners, who were kind of driving the content from the university perspective. We came up with a system that is in production, has been for 5, 6 years now. It's growing constantly. More universities and polytechnic schools are joining and taking it into use. And it's even in a shape that you could actually use it in everywhere in Europe. So it's really resilient. It's versatile. Um, I think that was like the biggest problem that I've encountered. I have lots of like small but really contained issues. I don't see those as crucial or something pivotal. They're more likely this is work, and I'm a kind of a solution oriented person. So I just take the challenge at hand and I drive directly at it.
When you think
Maybe
about
with
that 4.5 year stint rewriting systems for universities that were all different, what
yeah.
are some of the key tips that you take from that experience that you want to share with aspiring or even already practicing CTOs?
Um, uh, you have to be able to live with constantly contradicting and changing requirements. That's like from a philosophical point of view and from a mental health perspective. It's a constant storm. It's a constant struggle, and it's really hard to maintain the focus because the demands are so different and varying. And you need to have this kind of abilities to work as a middleman. Like you have to be able to focus on getting some kind of a compromise out of it because the requirements are so vastly different and the people's expectations are so different. You need to have the capabilities to produce some kind of a technological focus and a kind of an outcome that everyone can agree. And when we have agreed that okay, we will go towards this idea, then everything suddenly becomes a much smaller problem, and they are like solvable in a smaller context. So then you can work with bounded context, like what type of services do we have? How do we store this data? How should we model our data and so forth? There are bounded contexts that you can solve in technological way or in a business way that supports the overall goal. So it's just hard to kind of take that jungle of people and desires, feature requests, and then for example legislation. It's jungle, and you have to kind of carve your path somehow, and it
Yeah,
requires a lot, like mentally. You have to have stamina. It takes years. So
absolutely.
in a longer
Be ready for
perspective,
it, right?
yeah, it's not easy. It's not going to be simple, but it's really rewarding when you actually see that hey, this will work and we can make it work. But it kind of requires capabilities that you don't think at first when you think about developing software. We're talking about like people abilities, like how do you adapt.
Humanistic abilities, yeah.
Indeed, and we are back into people. So we had an excellent team. We had even a kind of a meeting room that was named the shouting room because people were so adamant of getting their own way that they were shouting at one point of time. Then we had to interfere, like, hey, we're all adults. Come on, we want to, and we can have some kind of an idea that will satisfy the needs of everyone in a way that we can move forward. So lots of like people skills, and I don't even want to go to yeah. We used Jira, of course. Yeah, it's like this bottomless pit where you can put all your wishes and wants, and you'll never see them again. Um, but you can make it. You can even make that work. It just requires that someone needs to take care that someone gives enough love for the items in the backlog. At least in a way, like I described this next 6 to 3 months, that what are we going to do? What are the bigger objectives that we want to achieve within the next like 3 or 4 months? And keep them like afloat in a shape that you can discuss, you can debate, you can argue, you can reason with them. And it requires people, it requires time. Um, if you're just a developer, this kind of a position might not be the best one because you need to do a lot of non-development stuff, like looking at those requirements and digging through the all those archaeological layers that you can find in Jira. And
The
it's like a
archaeological
lot of
layers. I
yeah,
love
yeah,
that. So,
yeah,
you
because
see, we're
yeah,
getting close to the end, but
yep,
I do have two questions,
yes.
quick questions for you. The first one is, as a CTO, what was the book that most influenced your approach to that role?
Um, there's no, I wouldn't recommend a book. Um, books are missing one. crucial thing that I think is crucial from my point of view, and it's context. The crucial thing for me has been the people I've been working with. I like this idea that I read from was it Chad Fowler who wrote a couple of agile books in 2008, 2010 time-ish. He was an avid jazz player, jazz musician. And he had this idea of always being the lousiest musician in the band. And I've tried to be like the lousiest developer or architect in the team that I work in. Why? Well, because if everyone else is smarter, more experienced, or brighter than I am, I will learn. So instead of a book, I would suggest of choosing the context more accurately. Like involve yourself with people who you like you look up to. And if you can work with those people or smarter people or who have more experience, go there and be like a sponge and suck it all in. That's been that's my idea. Yes, you can read like books about architecture and like tackling all of these technological issues, and most likely there are lots of good books. But for me, I've just immersed myself in the experience of other people and try to learn from there, like by doing, being inside the context, getting your hands dirty, and so forth.
That's getting back to that. It's all about people statement that you had in the bio for sure.
Yeah.
So Jussi, we're getting close to the end. The last question is, what about if people want to get in touch with you, learn more about you, and even CarbonLink? Where should they go?
Well, yeah, LinkedIn. I have reduced my usage of social media because it took too much time. But LinkedIn is one way. Just you can find me on LinkedIn, and then our company has a website, and just my picture and name, and it's like first name dot last name at carbonlink.fi if someone wants to add something about me.
Absolutely. We'll put the link to those on the show notes. Jussi, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for your generosity with your time and your knowledge.
Yeah. Thank you. I always love to babble about these things because, as I said, this is like two people now discussing. It's all about people.
Hey, friend, thank you for staying. Here is all you need to know about the Global Agile Summit. If you've ever suffered or know people who are suffering from agile fatigue, this event is for you. Agile fatigue is that feeling that settles in when we can't really see a light at the end of the tunnel. We get discouraged, especially when conversations revolve around the same old frameworks, the same old buzzwords and theories. We don't feel that energy anymore. Well, the Global Agile Summit is a different kind of event. We're bringing you real-life first-person stories of Agile succeeding out there in the real world that will inspire you to take action and transform the way you work. The Global Agile Summit will happen in Tallinn, Estonia, May 18th, that's the workshop day, and then 19th and 20th, the conference day. And Tallinn, Estonia is one of the most innovative tech hubs in Europe. The Global Agile Summit is hosted together with Latitude 59, which is kind of a citywide celebration of software startups and groundbreaking ideas. And we'll have a shared ticket for you to attend those events as well. So who will be speaking? Well, we've got an incredible lineup of thought leaders in software and Agile. For example, Clinton Keith, the person who literally wrote the book on game development with Scrum, and is busy bringing Agile to the world of game development. You must check his session. The very famous and well-known Jürgen Apelo, author of Management 3.0, will be talking and exploring about AI's impact on leadership. We also have Gojko Adzic, who's taking an unconventional look at the product growth with his lizard optimization keynote. Other speakers include, for example, Sven Dietz, who's challenging everything we know about software development by literally ditching contracts and estimates. Can you imagine? His teams deliver software before their competitors are even done with the contract negotiation. How agile is that? But there's more. We'll cover engineering practices in our developer track with talks on, for example, AI-assisted test-driven development, developing products in minutes with a different approach to how we develop, configure, deploy platforms, and much more. We also have a product track where we cover cutting-edge ideas around product discovery, delighting customers with product delight frameworks. We'll have a talk about that. And we also have an agile business track where we will talk about, for example, open strategy, a very agile approach to managing organizations and delivering software faster to clients, faster than you can even write a contract, literally. I mean, I already told you about Sven Ditz's story. It's amazing. It definitely is a must-see. I'm sure you'll be inspired and get a lot of ideas for your own software projects and software delivery. Now, whether you're a business leader, a product innovator, or a developer, you'll definitely find value in our 3 focused tracks. That's Agile Business for those working with businesses and organizations, Agile Product for product managers, product owners, and innovators, and Agile Developer for the builders, making Agile work in practice, the coders, the testers, the designers, the producers, the Scrum Masters, you name it. If you join, you will meet over 200 Agile professionals from all over the world. People who, just like you, want to grow, want to share, and want to learn by challenging the ideas that don't work anymore. At the Global Agile Summit, you'll get new connections, fresh ideas, and the energy to take your own Agile to the next level. And who knows, maybe even find your next career opportunity. So don't miss out. Check out the full program and grab your ticket now at globalagilesummit.com. I'm really looking forward to seeing you all in Tallinn, Estonia in May. I'll see you there.